This video is a summation of a few thoughts I've been having over the last few weeks in order to try to capture the spirit of the time, the zeitgeist, using some ideas and thoughts of people who are a lot smarter than I am. And I shared this presentation with a number of colleagues and they quite enjoyed it, so now I'm sharing it with you. So as the saying goes, we live in unprecedented times. Esther Perel is a Belgian psychotherapist and New York Times bestselling author, is the creator of the podcast Where Shall We Begin and How's Work, and I was directed to read her recent blog post around what is this feeling, anticipatory grief, and other new pandemic-related emotions. One of the things that Esther Perel talks about is prolonged uncertainty. We keep on not knowing how long this might go on for. We also have this sense of ambiguous loss. There's some things that we know that we've lost, but there's so many things that have changed that we're not even sure, to some extent, what we have lost and what we recognize. There are also positive emotions that come out of this. Viktor Frankl talked about the human capacity to creatively turn life's negative aspects into something positive or constructive. And what Esther Perel argues is that if we can cultivate some tragic optimism together, we can incur some post-traumatic growth. I know that I miss my staff and that I've learned that it's tremendously difficult to maintain a sense of connection and to keep up with everyone when you can't just walk by one of the facilities and check in with people and see how they're doing. So much learning and so much of our lives is through small moments of connection with people. And I think this loss can be described as a loss of face-to-face contact. There's no after-class chats, there's no coffee talk, there are no hallway conversations, there's no chit-chat before and after the meeting, and your entire routine of the academic life of going to the university and being on campus is completely disrupted. But really what's most important is this notion of presence. And credit goes out to Jim Nottingham from University of Arts London and his colleagues who turned me on to David O. White's work. David is a director of digital learning at University of Arts London and wrote a fantastic piece on how presence is not about contact hours with students. There's very much a temptation in our current time to do what he calls practice mirroring. In the move to online teaching, our initial instinct is to preserve contact hours by mirroring what have been face-to-face sessions with webinar-style sessions. And part of our current condition is that there's a lot of assumptions that we have about students, faculty, and staff. So the question becomes, what do we do in this situation? How do we accommodate teachers and learners who are in various different situations with recommendations around synchronous and asynchronous learning? Full credit to Mike Caulfield, who is the director of blended and networked learning at Washington State, Vancouver, for his excellent Dirt Simple online blog post and website, which outlines the work of Daniel Stanford. Daniel Stanford is the director of faculty development and for teaching and learning at DePaul University and is also an art and design graduate from Savannah College. Daniel Stanford has created this amazing infographic, which really illustrates the challenges and opportunities of various modes of curriculum delivery with synchronous and asynchronous. Mike Caulfield and Daniel Stanford talk about moving students into the red zone. The red zone is where a lot of people want to spend time. Those are video conferences and audio conferences, live synchronous stuff. And really, when we move students into the red zone, we make a lot of assumptions about how prepared they are to do so. What's their network bandwidth like? Do they have a place in their house that they can accommodate this? And really, when you think about it, this whole chart is really describing what David O. White calls presence. David O. White describes presence as a fairly quick, reliable turnaround to emailed questions. When somebody gets back to you right away, you feel like they're almost there. Being live in forums or text chats, lively synchronous sessions where, let's say, the participants are really driving the content and it's not a one-way delivery. Artfully flipped use of pre-recorded videos and then audio-video feedback to students. This slide really delineates some of the major differences. Asynchronous is on demand, whereas synchronous is a real-time event. Asynchronous is more flexible pace. You can stop, pause, rewind, watch it again, where synchronous is live. Think about asynchronous as being like Netflix and synchronous as being like broadcast television. Of course, when you have broadcast television, the stakes are higher. You can't make mistakes. Whereas with asynchronous, you have more preparation time and also more time to review. You can ensure higher quality items. You can build in accessibility on the front end. I also talked in this slide about how asynchronous was sort of the way social media really started. Think about Facebook and Twitter. They really started as being largely asynchronous. Although Twitter is quite a bit faster, neither Twitter nor Facebook ever had any synchronous video until much later, or real-time chat. They really gained their popularity as asynchronous platforms. I've always said that some of these online platforms can test your attention. And there's lots of research out there, and the National Geographic has written a recent article about Zoom fatigue. Part of the problem with some of these platforms is that so much of our face-to-face interaction is communicated via nonverbal cues. And those nonverbal cues are not captured in enough fidelity for us to be able to digest them. There's a huge focus on words, but you can't actually see sometimes what their facial expressions are, whether they're grimacing or sighing, or getting the read of the room is very difficult. And it makes it even more problematic the more participants you have, and also the greater the number of participants that are displayed on the screen at one time. Some platforms are able to display more users on the screen, but this just simply divides your attention. So the challenge that we have is that a lot of this stuff can create a lot of anxiety. The belief that presence is synchronous video, there's video conference fatigue, students might be suffering from technological barriers, they might have poor internet or be continents away. All of these things can create a lot of anxiety. Some of the best synchronous events I've ever been to are ones that are shorter. They have more participants. The participants drive the content. They have highly well-attended, moderated Q&A and chat so that everyone can participate. And they're recorded, captioned, and provided later so that you can go back and review. Better asynchronous content means better accessibility. This also means that students have more time to process and reflect on the work and the content that's being provided. It means that they have greater opportunity to participate. My colleagues in the Faculty Curriculum Development Center introduced me to this concept of the community of inquiry, but then also tied in with universal design for learning. So this notion that we have a way of thinking about how we engage with our learners, and then also we're doing so in a way that is highly accessible to everyone. The concept is that there is social presence, which is a student's sense of belonging in a course. There's cognitive presence, which is the extent to which the participants are able to construct meaning through sustained communication. And there's teaching presence, which is design, facilitation, and the direction of cognitive and social processes for the purpose of realizing personally meaningful and educational worthwhile learning outcomes. When you put it all together, it creates the educational experience, and this entire thing creates community for the students and the instructor together. And it is through synchronous and asynchronous learning that this is created. If you liked this presentation or thought it could be improved in some ways, send me an email at amcallister@ocadu.ca. Or hit me up on Twitter, where I like to hang out with all the ed tech folks and CIOs, learning from greater minds than mine. Thank you.